Hello, mortals. I am the BookTube Goddess, the #1 drag queen booktuber on YouTube. I've been reacting to trailers and pre-release videos to the new animated series, The Legend of Vox Machina, so of course I want to review the release. By the way, I want to give a huge thank you to all you critters who watched those videos and my reviews of Campaign 3. Now, this isn't a Critical Role channel or even a D&D channel. My focus is mostly on fantasy and science fiction books, but I'd be remiss to mention that this channel was monetized, which is crazy, because of a surge of views on my Critical Role video, so I'll always and forever be grateful to those critters who gave me a chance. If you are not aware of the origins of The Legend of Vox Machina, it started as a Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game by a group of voice actors. At some point, Geek and Sundry heard about this home game and thought it would be cool to broadcast the role-playing sessions live, and thus Critical Role was born. So over the years and hundreds of hours of broadcast, Critical Role has spun off on its own and grew to be its own little empire with a very loyal and large fan base. They dreamed of one day seeing Critical Role in animation, which is a natural direction for voice actors, obviously. So in March of 2019, they launched a Kickstarter campaign to raise $750,000, which would fund a 22-minute animation. Did I mention they have a large and loyal fan base? The Kickstarter raised $1 million in 1 hour. And a little over a month later, they raised over $11 million. What? That's insane! But it's also enough to produce an entire 12-episode season. And now the first 3 episodes have finally been released this week on Amazon Prime. As a big fan of the original Vox Machina campaign, I've been very vocal about how much I've been looking forward to this animated version. Of course, recently I've been disappointed in the releases that I've talked up before. Thank you, Dune and Wheel of Time. So I cautiously watched these first episodes, and I was thrilled with what I saw. I think they captured the essence of Vox Machina, yet they were able to transform the sprawling D&D sessions into a very entertaining animated series, which, by the way, is no small feat. You may have heard me talk about this before, the adage, the medium is the message, which means the format of a story shapes the story. Translating a story from one medium to another does not always work because the story relies on the medium, whether it be a novel or a musical or a movie or whatever. Whenever an adaptation tries to stick too closely to the source material, it doesn't always work. On the other hand, when an adaptation goes too far afield from the source material, it can lose the essence of the original story. One of the reasons I am so fascinated by Critical Role is that this is an entire new medium of entertainment. I don't know if you understand the significance of that. It's like being around to read the first novel or witnessing the first musical. You simply can't overlay any known storytelling structure over a D&D campaign. There's no 3-act structure. Forget about Save the Cat. We are in entirely new territory here. D&D campaigns were never designed to be spectator sports, but somehow Critical Role combines D&D with improvisation and voice acting to create a new medium of entertainment. And it's really interesting seeing the progression from Campaign 1, which if you watch the early episodes starts, or at least has a feel to me of a more traditional D&D campaign that many of us recognize, and which probably could only be fully appreciated by other D&D players. But it's evolved into this unique form of entertainment where the players, who are actors, are both playing D&D and improvising to the audience. Someone mentioned in the comments on one of my videos something called the Matt Mercer effect, which meant new players go into D&D campaigns expecting something like Critical Role. But that's like the difference of singing around a campfire with friends and seeing a live concert. I've played D&D for decades and never had a session similar to what Matt Mercer produces, but then again, I've also never played to an audience, much less trained to be an actor. Even though I'm not an actor, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. So anyway, you can imagine the challenge of translating a new medium that spans hundreds of hours into a traditional season of animated shows. First of all, they gathered a team of experienced writers who worked on animations for Star Wars and Justice League, Spider-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and on and on. I have no idea if all these writers were fans of Critical Role, but if they weren't, I can only imagine that they were guided by Matt Mercer or others who knew the Vox Machina campaign inside and out. And they pulled plot points mostly from the Whitestone campaign to create a storyline that fits into the medium of an animated series. So again, let's go back and look at a more traditional 3-act structure. Now, 3-act doesn't mean that the story is divided into 3 equal parts. Usually part 1, which sets up the complication, is the shortest. I think it's safe to say that these first 3 episodes make up the first act. And honestly, I think the 3rd episode actually is the first act, and episodes 1 and 2 are more of a prologue. The first 2 episodes don't really touch on the main story arc of Whitestone, assuming that's what the rest of the season is going to focus on, which is what I've heard. I have no reason to disbelieve. That said, it's perfectly reasonable, I think, in an animated series to kick off on an unrelated sequence so the audience can get to know the characters, give some backstory, like how the party got their house in Amman, and how they started out as disreputable. They were broke. They were always looking for gold and treasure. Maybe some of them were a bit incompetent, like casting lightning on a blue dragon, since we all know that blue dragons cast lightning themselves and are immune to electricity. Anyway, we get the relationships among the different Vox Machina characters, as well as with the Tal'Dorei Council. We also immediately get the tone of the series, and that it is not made for kids. It is for adults, or at least PG-13. We get a little bit of nudity and sex, and we get a lot of F-bombs. Like I had predicted in my last video, we also get a fair amount of adolescent humor and jokes. The target audience is definitely adults, and specifically was made for fans of Critical Role. And there are a lot of little jokes and interactions for the fans, like mixing up which of the siblings is Vax and which is Vex, and the flirting between Vax and Gilmore. And for me, there were little things like I had forgotten about Vax's belt that turns into a snake, but as soon as I saw it, I remembered how Vax loved that magic item and used it a lot in the campaign. But what I think is the main storyline wasn't really introduced until episode 3 with the arrival of Lord and Lady Briarwood of Whitestone, even though Whitestone was mentioned briefly in the earlier episodes. Here we get backstory on Percy de Rollo. Did he mention his full name? I don't remember, but if not, I'm sure he will at some point. We find out that Percy's family once ruled Whitestone and that they were slaughtered by the Briarwoods. At least one of the Briarwoods is a vampire, and they came to Amon for the council meeting in order to try to mind control the sovereign to stay away from Whitestone, since the sovereign was considering investigating Whitestone. Vax sneaks into the bedroom and finds a book that mentions the Whispered Ones, and we all know what that means. Or if you don't, you will by the end of the series. The episode ends with Vox Machina being arrested. Now, I loved the first 3 episodes, the humor, the animation, the story, everything was firing on all cylinders for me. If we accept that episode 3 is actually the first act, and there are 9 more episodes left in the story, we can keep an eye out for a few things. Keep a lookout for the midpoint, which would probably be episode 7. Midpoints are also turning points, and it doesn't always have to be like a big turning point in the plot, but it could be in terms of the character arcs. If you're familiar with James Scott Bill's writing from the middle, you'll understand how important that middle moment is. And assuming the last episode, episode 12, is a denouement, the climax is probably going to be in episodes 10 and 11, which means episodes 8 and 9 are going to be Dark Night of the Soul, so we can expect the party is going to have their asses handed to them in those episodes. And next week, we're probably going to see episodes that put obstacle in front of Vox Machina, which they have to overcome as they slowly progress to traveling to Whitestone to confront the Briarwoods and finding a few revelations along the way. Oh, I should mention my favorite part of the series so far are Scanlan's songs. Rarely do you see bards portrayed doing what they do best, singing. And Sam Riegel is pretty much a genius at playing a bard, or at least at playing Scanlan. I'm not sure if I'll do a week-by-week reaction to this series. Let me know if you want to see that in the comments. But if I don't do that, I'll at least do a recap at the end of the series to see how much I got right on the structure of the story arc. Until we meet again, may all the books you read and the campaigns you play in and their adaptations be blessed.